Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your ever-loving host, Shorty. And today, from Dark Horse Comic Books, it's Last Flight Out. Now, good comic book. Going to get that out of the way straight away. But because of the nature of the comic book and what it's dealing with, I'm probably going to talk about science quite a lot. In the description below, I linked to the Cochrane Institute. I'm going to talk about them later. You should go and check them out and see what they do. But because this is a comic book review thing, that's basically what I'm here for. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about the comic book. It's fine. It's Last Flight Out. It's sci-fi. It's kind of hard sci-fi set in the near future where death is a thing. Climate change has been ignored so much, and it turns out CV90 was way worse than we thought. And people basically have a few years left to live on a planet which is tearing itself apart. So they are making massive generational ships to launch into space, hopefully to find another world for them. The story takes place mostly at the point where the third and final one is ready to go. And one of the lead scientists, the architects, spelled ARK, just for entertainment value, is trying to find his daughter, who is neglected most of his life because he spent his life working on the generational ships. Right, that's the basic plot rundown. The writing within it is actually really quite good. You get a sense of characters from the way they speak and from where they're drawn, and the plot itself is actually quite compelling. There's nothing wrong at all with it at all, even though it kind of didn't excite me in the way I thought it was going to be. I think because it spends quite a lot of this first issue just setting itself up, which is not really an issue. I prefer it when stuff goes a little bit beyond that. People who've been following this for a while will know that about me, but I can't really criticize it. It does everything it's supposed to, and it does it well. Artwork is where it kind of excels for me. Some rather nice multi-panel pages showing time passing with just very similar focus on a character, them gradually aging and becoming more and more disheveled as the backdrop changes, and the nature of the conversations shift to show that they're happening at different times. But when you get to a nice splash page like that, to give a sense of scale to how big the generational ships are, the massive haulage ships at the bottom there, you get a sense that this is a big work. And the artwork works well throughout it. It's got action and adventure later on. There is people in a flying craft that gets basically going through environmental issues and has catastrophic engine failure. And it all looks very exciting. The movement is brilliant. It feels kinetic and alive. All in all, really good comic book. But what I'm going to talk about mostly is I think what its key kind of point is, which is there an event so big, something so terrifying, something so dangerous that making sacrifices to deal with it are worthwhile? Is there a point when giving up your humanity on an individual level for the greater good is worthwhile? And I think there absolutely is like a good debate there. I think it's handled really quite nicely. It's shown from different points of view, people who are pro and con, including somebody who basically feels like they're competent to make the decision about what one individual should do based on their own experience, but they don't have the same lived experience. And it puts the reader in the point of view of where would you land? And this is made even more complicated by only a few pages later realizing that it's not just a matter of personal sacrifice that's gone on here. There's a moralistic, societal sacrifice that's being made of what would be necessary to launch these ships with the computing power necessary. As everyone knows right now, there's been major problems with getting hold of the right kinds of materials to keep processors going due to Bitcoin mining and tied in with CV19 and such things. All of this is causing major problems, but a lot of that can come down to economics. Even on like even on like just a countrywide basis, it's still an issue. But this is for the survival of mankind. Would it be worth doing? And those questions do need answering. They're problems we're going to face. And the reason we're facing these problems is because the other key point that this comic book makes is people who are not believing it. People who look at the situation and see conspiracy rather than truth, who consider themselves skeptical, but in fact go along with weird groupthink rather than actual evidence. And that's why I've linked to the Cochrane Institute, because they actually look at not just a study that's been done, but they look at multiple studies and they rank the studies based on how effective they are by their metrics of how many people are involved, whether it's been double blind, how long it's been running for, how the samples have been put together. It basically looks at all the things which make a study good or bad, puts them all into a 4 axes graph, and allows people to look at them and decide what the results show compared to what the study was about and how effectively it was run. And an awful lot, go back to the comic book here, of the people who are represented in this comic book who claim that the world dying is just going to be a conspiracy are the same people who didn't believe in climate change, the same people who thought CV-19 was just going to be slightly worse than the flu, and such things like that. This comic book raises these points. It does it in quite an effective way, but I think it runs the risk of I don't want to say alienating people who believe conspiracy theories, because I don't think those kind of people really read this comic book, or if they did, they'd do it just to take the mickey out. But anyway, their mind would be already made up. But I think they have a chance to deal with some actual science in here. The closest they come to showing any kind of realistic take on it is somebody who seems to be, for the most part, intelligent, well put together individual who still is skeptical, who claim they're going to do their own thinking, but seem to be basing their own thinking on what they've seen on YouTube videos and various things like that. These kind of problems are bigger, and I think the comic book has a chance to do something talking about this, but it doesn't quite manage it. It doesn't mean it's a bad comic book, though, because let's face it, my own personal viewpoint on this kind of thing would give me a bias, but none of that stops it being a well-written, well-executed, and really well-drawn comic book. Thoroughly enjoyable. I'll come back tomorrow. Hopefully I'll have something cool and new to review for you then. Until then, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe.